Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship, the internet's best kept secret where we make debt payoff super simple. In fact, this channel has almost 800 videos on debt payoff. 800, right? And I think this is video 798. So we have 797 videos about debt payoff in our playlist. 798, and we're just going to keep cranking them out because debt payoff is super simple. That's how we keep cranking out videos because we make it simple or it's so simple, right? So let's go ahead and get started with paying off debt using something we call the velocity method. And what is the first step to paying off debt? Well, it's simply to create a budget, right? Your budget is your debt attack plan. You have your income, your expenses, your leftover checking and savings, and then your expense breakdown, you list every single debt that you have, right? So we see here we have 3 credit cards, an auto loan, and a mortgage. And so on top of that, we have our personal expenses that are not tied to debt, right? Food, gas, insurance. So think of all the things that you have to pay for. Even if you're debt free, we just combine them into one line item. Whereas with everything that is a debt, right, we have to make sure we separate them out because eventually we're going to get rid of these payments and increase our cash flow. So one of the ways that will determine if this will work for you as a general rule of thumb is if you were debt free, would your life be better, right? So let's say that all of your debt payments go to zero. Well, will you have more in your checking and savings? And if the answer is yes, then this will 99.999%, kind of like those germ commercials where they always talk about, well, it gets rid of 99.99% of germs, right? Will probably be better for you, right? This will probably work for you, okay? Now, even if you were debt free and let's say, your income was like $1,000 and you're still negative, then this is not going to help you, right? You have what Dave Ramsey would call, you have an income problem. Actually, that's not how Dave Ramsey sounds, but I'm pretending that that's how Dave Ramsey sounds. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next step. So we created our budget, our debt attack plan. And what's the next step? Well, it's easy. We just show how if we, even with the same income and the same expenses, okay, same income, same expenses, that we can increase something called our cash flow. Now, let me tell you the first step to this velocity method of paying off debt. Okay, let me tell you the first step. It's simply putting the checking and savings to zero, right? So the difference between the left side and the right side is that in the left side, you think of your checking account as like the final destination of your money. And so what happens with a lot of people is because they're afraid to they're afraid to overpay debt. What happens is they just end up making minimum payments on everything and then leaving the leftover in the checking account, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to dump all of our money into debt, specifically one tool called a line of credit. And if you don't know what a line of credit is, it's basically a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again, right? So there's 2 types of lines of credit that is available to the general public, which is a personal line of credit and a home equity line of credit if you're a homeowner, okay? Personal line or a home equity line, all right? And then there's also a business line of credit if you run a business, but we're just assumed this is debt payoff for your own personal situation. So we're gonna assume we have a free and clear home equity line of credit, 35,000. So literally, what we can do is we go to the bank's website, we click a button, and they'll dump up to 35 grand into our checking account, and we can freely reuse that money and cycle through it as much as we wish. Right now, here's the catch. Okay, if you have a good portion of your expenses is debt, right, and you don't have that much left over, okay, is the bank going to give you, let's say, a free and clear line of credit where the balance is zero, starting balance is zero? The answer to that is no, right? The answer to that is no. And you might be wondering, why is that? It's because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? Banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay. Now you might be asking, well, why am I demonstrating this with the free and clear line of credit if the bank is not going to lend it to me? Is because understanding the concept is way easier than even a realistic scenario. So I have this realistic scenario right here with 22 debts, $4.10 left over, And usually what happens is that people get lines of credit, but they max it out and treat it like another credit card. And I'm going to be here all day if we're actually going to go through this. So just to make it easy and show you how powerful and effective having a line of credit would be, we just assume the unrealistic assumption that you'll get a free and clear line of credit when you obviously can't. Because why? Because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay, remember that. All right, so now this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and use the cash flow index. If you don't know what the cash flow index is, it's just basically the balance of their debt divided by the monthly payment. And then you just think of this as a ranking system for your debt, okay? And then you just kind of sort this by smallest to largest, and then use this as your debt payoff order, okay? So why would we pay this big number last? Well, basically, what does this mean? It means that you have to give the mortgage a large amount of money. In this case, it'll be $265,000 for a small amount of cash flow in exchange, right? Whereas the credit cards, we pay a relatively small amount of money in exchange for a bigger cash flow, right? It's about balance to payment ratio, okay? So that's what we're going to do. And then what we're going to do is take the smallest ones and then move it into a line of credit. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So that's 5, 8, 15, and we're going to sum it up. And that's $28,000, okay? $28,000. So we're gonna move it into a line of credit. And once we do that, guess what happens to these payments? Oh my goodness, these 3 credit cards go to 0, right? These 3 credit cards go to 0. And then look at that. Oh my goodness, how did this $917 turn into $1,839.54? Did we make more money? I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah, that's essentially what happened, is that we just shifted some debt and somehow this $900 almost multiplied by 2. Yeah, and I want you to stare at that. I mean, think about this for 1 second. How do we go from like literally double with the same amount of income? There are people literally killing themselves for an extra job just to be able to do the same, right? Well, I won't say literally, figuratively. Okay. I want to say literally, but maybe, I mean, we're all dying literally anyways every single day that we're alive. Anyways, random philosophical conversation and rant. But okay, there are people who literally are working another job just to get this amount extra every single month, and we didn't make more money. See how the income is the same? The income is the same, right? And so now what we're going to do is show that after every single month, the balance of the line of credit should go down. So this is the final step where we put our entire paycheck into that line of credit as an overpayment, and then we take our expenses out and then rinse and repeat over and over again. It's just kind of like overpaying a credit card, right? There's the minimum payment. Now we just overpay. Now, why do we overpay a line of credit? Is because this is the only financial tool that the bank provides that where you could dump your entire money in and you'll have no problem getting the money out. Even with credit cards, which is technically a line of credit, you're going to have an issue, right? Like you put all your money into one credit card, you can't pay the other credit cards or loans, or it's extremely hard where you got to use like balance transfers and plastic.com. Not ideal, right? All right, so now let's go ahead and get the next month's balance plus the previous month's balance and plus previous month's balance, previous month's interest minus our cash flow, 1839.54. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance, multiply it by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. So that's how we calculate the interest. So think about this. If your minimum payment is around like 180 or a little bit more than 180, and you put your entire $5,500 paycheck in there, okay, you're going to make the monthly payment, right? You don't have to sweat about, am I going to make this month's debt payment? Not if you put your entire paycheck in there, right? And take your expenses out. And then you rinse and repeat over and over again, and then you see that in month 17, whoa, it's been paid off. How do we do that? Must be a scam. All right, so now 17 months. Okay, so this is going to be 28K. So we're going to pay that off, 28K. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste. And then this is the auto loan and the mortgage, and we're gonna just do this right here. So we have this loan calculator right here that tells us the balance of everything, and then also the cash flow index, right? So The average person, I'll tell you what the average person would do. They would focus on this 4%, right? Because it is the highest interest rate. Whereas we're thinking a little bit more holistically, and we're going to use a cash flow index. So as a general rule of thumb, anything below 50 is pretty safe to pay off, right? Because it gives you a good amount of cash flow based on the proportion of the debt that you're paying off. Whereas here, this one, we want to pay off last because you got a huge debt. And if you move this huge debt into a line of credit, you're only getting an itty bitty amount of cash flow. So it doesn't make sense to do that. Okay. So now this is what we're going to do. We're going to put this, this balance and move it into a line of credit. So that's going to be plus 16097.54. And then because we move the balance of the auto loan into the line of credit, we get this extra $395 of cash flow, right? And let's go ahead and update our cash flow here. And so this is going to be minus 2234.85. And look at that. I don't know if you saw that, but when we added the cash flow, it just made a $1 difference in the $1 or $2 difference in the amount of interest that we paid. Amazing. Even though we added almost, what was it, almost $400 of cash flow. All right, so now it's 24 months. So 24 months, we've just paid off 24 months. So it's 28 plus 22. So that's $50K, right? So now this is $265,000, okay? $265,000. So how much is the current balance of the mortgage? Well, we just simply put month 24 right here. And right now it's 255,000. So 265 is the original balance. 255,000 is the current balance. And are we going to move the whole loan into a line of credit like we did with the auto loan? The answer to that is no, right? Think of the CFI number, okay? If we move a number, a balance whose CFI number is extremely huge, like 200, that means that we're moving this 4% loan into an 8% line of credit, and we're getting itty bitty amount of cash flow. But let me show you a trick. If you still want to use a line of credit, you might be thinking, wow, the line of credit makes it so easy for me to pay off the loan, because every time I try to overpay a credit card or a loan itself, it just introduced friction in how I moved money and made life I can't even speak, made life harder than it should have been, right? So we can still use a line of credit. Now, I'm not saying you can't use extra payments or direct payments into the loan, but the reason I don't recommend, or I wouldn't do direct payments into the loan, is the same thing as the reason I never overpay a credit card, right? We just overpay a line of credit because the line of credit is the only financial tool where you could dump all your money in and easily get it out, right? All right, so here's what we can do, is that if you still want to use a line of credit, even an 8% line of credit on a 4% loan, right? You can do it in small pieces, small chunks. We call it sweeps, right? So the most important thing that you can get out of this is not whether you're doing extra payments or a HELOC. The most important thing that you can really get out of this, okay, is that you have to pay your mortgage last, because your mortgage provides the least amount of cash flow out of all your debts, because it's a big loan for small payment over a long period of time. Okay. Now, luckily, we have this calculator here that shows us what happens when we use a HELOC to pay off a mortgage or any loan, actually, any amortized loan. In fact, let's take a look at this. So you know how a lot of people are afraid about 8% loan, OMG, right? 8% loan. I cannot believe it. Okay. So that's 7.1 years, right? 8%, 7.1 years. That means that's a 39 grand in interest that we pay over that 7.1 years. Okay. Now let's assume that this was just a 1% line of credit. So take a look at this. I'm going to click the enter button. Oh my goodness, that just made 2 grand of difference. Okay. So 1 to 8 didn't really make that much of a difference. Now, obviously, if you could put the whole loan into a 1% line of credit, that would be amazing, right? But when you do it, and you see that if you do that, obviously the interest really decreases. But when you use a small amount and then move it into a line of credit, it almost makes it's like a very negligible difference, almost negligible, right? You'll end up paying more, obviously, as you use a higher interest rate tool. But the reason why the tool is a higher interest rate is because the higher interest rate means that you have more access to your money, right? So interest rate means two things: risk of the borrower and how much access to you have to your money, which is why a loan typically has a lower interest rate than a line of credit. Okay. All right. Well, see how easy that was? And we're at 15 minutes because we can go through pretty much any debt payoff scenario in about 15 minutes or so, right? In about 15 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it's going to be 0. And then this is going to be 24 divided by 12 plus, how many years was it? This was 7.1. Okay, whoopsie, 7.1. And then we see that in 9.1 years, we are debt free. Woohoo! All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Karina Lanta Mentorship here with another video. Leave a comment below, and I have to do the standard YouTuber. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And there's also a hype button now on certain platforms. I've seen the hype button. Okay. All right. Have a great day. I'll see you on the next video.